the problem. The problem lies with that racism and with that fear of a black planet or with that fear of a colored planet. So therefore, we have to attack that who has or housed the most melanin in their DNA, and that is the black man. Women cannot impose sex on a man. If a woman went to a man with an Uzi or a gun and say, I want to have sex with you, give this to me, there's not going to be any production because there is not going to be any erection.
Yeah.
Whereas with a man, he can take control over a woman. And I disagree and don't agree with any man taking something that is not his. However, if a man can do this, only men can impose sex on a woman. So from a Europe-centric perspective and idea, that is war. And so we have to get rid of the black man. And until we start to recognize what has happened and why this system exists, particularly when it comes down to black people or African people, then we're going to continue to blame one another. But we have to go back and look at all areas of people activity. We are under European domination in education and labor and law and sex and war. And it's not our fault. We're simply not understanding the dynamics of why this attack is on, and we're beating each other and clubbing each other.
Where are these conversations among white folk taking place around this issue of xenophobia, the elimination of the white race? I mean, what corridors of power? Maybe we're not accessing it, we don't know. There has been this Truth and Conciliation Forum that took place in South Africa where they were able to dialogue. I can identify that as a place where the fear could be discussed openly. But where are these conversations taking place among white folk that this is what they're concerned about?
I most definitely think it's, you know, in a much higher source, particularly in the government.
Okay.
That's my take on it.
But you have a lot of African American employees in the government. So are they excluded from those closed door meetings?
Well, we have a lot of sellout African Americans.
Okay, so they're participating in it.
Yeah,
Well, they have no choice.
Well,
Yeah.
they are
Okay.
participating
They have no
because
choice
they're part of the framework that's designed. You take like they had the G20 summit in South Africa, and all of the world leaders were there to discuss, you know, population control. They're not discussing population control in Europe. They're discussing population control in Africa. So we have to understand that it's us. We are the ones that they're after. We have politicians who are fearful, scared to death that, you know, they don't want no more Mexicans coming across the border because more black and brown people. They want to slow down the immigration from other countries because more and more they say in the next 20 years,
The browning of America.
the brown and black will be the dominant culture in America. That's why they are busy working, trying to change the rules and the laws around who runs everything. Because if we're going to be the dominant people, but they control the rule making, they make the laws, we still won't be able to have any input because they'll still run America the same way it's always been ran.
Well, if they control your African mind.
Right.
That's right.
Okay, let's be clear, that is exactly what is happening. If I can control your mind, then therefore I can do whatever I want and I can program you and teach you whatever I so choose. If you are afraid as an African person to go back and see your greatness, because we're not being taught the greatness of Kwame Nkrumah or Patrice Lumumba or any of our great people back home. The only way Malcolm X or El-Haj Malik Shabazz got his knowledge is because that blood lineage, that DNA, he's connected to that source and has no fear of going back home and connecting to his land base. Okay, so everyone has their own land base. Chinese control China, the French control France. We are not controlling our resources. We are being controlled and patrolled by those who want to rob and steal and pillage from us, and we have to recognize that as a people.
So, and I think when you talk about all that, then basically the onus is on us. The onus is on us to regroup, understand the political lay of the land, where we're at as a people and what we need to do. And the sad thing is that instead of us coming together, we're going further and further apart from each other.
But why is that?
Because a lot of us are really materialistic now. We've brought into a lot of the Western mindset of me,
That's
I,
right.
mine.
That's right.
They,
Okay,
and
That's
and
right.
I
That's it
have,
right there.
I have my car, I have my home,
That's
I have
right.
my job, and I'm not going to mess it up for you.
That's right.
You need to pull your bootstraps up, even if you don't have any boots, but you need to do what you need to do. And so for us, I think prior to our ancestors, a couple of generations back, they knew you were obligated to help your community. You were obligated to go
my
back,
brother's
and we've
keepers.
lost that obligation, a lot of us, that we need to go back and help our communities.
I believe part of that took place with the assimilation and from segregation. I think once we started to buy into the trick,
Integration?
yes, I believe that was the main culprit
And that's
of this
where
problem.
our house Negro and our field Negro
Field
come
Negro,
from. And
that's right.
Malcolm said, you know, why would you want to integrate into a house that's on fire?
That's
Well,
right.
we have to understand that these people are our enemy. We don't like to say that word because we bought into this whole melting pot, America the Great, with all of the races coming together. But in reality, the very religions that we study and build our foundation from are racist. They're, you know, Christianity is from a European perspective. Islam is from an Arab perspective. It has nothing to do with African people. We are a spiritual natured people. Until we get back to that, until we start to dialogue and start to question the things that we've been participating in, and it's not just the materialistic things, until we can get our mind right on who we are, what our purpose is on this planet, we're going to continue down this trail of destruction.
Is there any hope coming out of Africa, the source where we first came to this country, as a solution to what issues are? And I guess the question becomes, what does the African think of the African American as well?
Well, they have been conditioned the same way that we have. One has
They've
been
been
colonized,
colonized,
and the
yeah.
other has been
Okay.
enslaved.
Enslaved,
So when you look at that, you pit one against the other. Everything that I learned as a youth growing up through elementary to high school, Africa was a wretched continent. You didn't want to be African or associated with Africa because of the fact that everything they showed you from a visual perspective was ugly, was taboo. You look at Tarzan
Right.
as one of them. You look at everything that comes out of Africa from a Eurocentric perspective, from a visual and or from a verbal. It has always been negative. However, on the other side of that coin, we see them taking the resources out of Africa. We see them taking the gold, the diamonds, the minerals, and so forth. China, as a matter of fact, right now is investing in Africa, but yet you still see Ebola, which is killing off millions, excuse me, hundreds of thousands of black people purposely. And this is not by some accident.
So this is
design.
man-made, perhaps.
It's designed.
Yeah, but I think also the issue, I just want to backtrack for a second. I think one of the things that we have to be conscious of or careful about is that we actually do have allies that are white folks. And we have some black people that are detrimental and that sell us out. 209, Ward Connolly. So we don't have affirmative action in California because of Ward Connolly, a black man.
Exactly.
So I think a lot of times when we paint, you know, all white people as bad, it's not a good thing because it's not true. And all of us as loving and embracing each other, that's not true. A lot of times we're our worst enemies and
right.
we don't really support each other the way we do. And I've worked with a lot of good white folks that have support our issues when I didn't see one of us sitting in the chair. to
No,
support
I agree with you. Maybe the
100%
term, maybe using the term, you know, white folks is a little over. It's not so over the top, but I think it's still white supremacy. And you have to understand that black people also participate in white supremacy.
That's right.
They are the ones who are interacting, who are buying into the materialistic ideology about how we're supposed to live. So who are the masses that control everything that we do? Not only here, but in Africa. Africa is in debt to America and Europe up to its neck. That's how they're colonizing
And
them
it's the
now.
re-enslavement of the
Yeah,
African
they
people.
can't afford to pay the bill back, so what they do, they come in and
Take the
possess the
resources.
land.
But they
take
came in,
possession.
yeah, they come in originally with the Bible
Yes.
and the gun.
Perfect example. You know, Christianity is just as popular in Africa as anything else now. That's not the original religion of African people.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so they've always done this. You know, they come in, they give you the Bible, And once they figured out that we have to control these people, and there's so many of them, how do we control them?
Can I ask a question now? I'm sorry
Yeah.
to cut you off. How did we fall for the trick? If we're the first people on the planet, the first psychologists, the first architects, we had the first bartering system, the Nile. So how did we, as
Fall for this.
African people, fall for the trick from a spiritual perspective? Because that's the first thing that was attacked, was our spirit and then our mind. So how did we?
Well, I think our spiritual evolution was one of embracing. So the first time a white man is seen by a black man, it may be odd, but you know, this world belongs to a higher power. So I could see them not saying, I'm not going to let you into my country, as opposed to, yes, you and come over for dinner tonight. I would see that as possibly, certainly not on a massive level, but clearly it wasn't, this is the enemy coming into my country.
And I think you paint a perfect example with Shaka Zulu, the movie Shaka Zulu.
Okay.
And Shaka was a powerful brother, a powerful king. And when the Europeans came in with the Bible and tricked him, he had, for example, gray hair. They used shoe polish and used it as magic, saying, okay, I'm going to take away your gray hair. Shaka looked at it and said, okay, wow.
Yeah.
They do have power. And it was a whole trick to make him believe that they had this power.
It didn't take long.
We were a trusting people.
Yeah, that's the word I think I'm looking for.
We are a trusting people.
Well, we are God-fearing people.
Yes, we are.
We love the Creator,
Yes.
the creators. So, you know, they understood this, that the only way we will ever conquer these people is it will never be through force. It has to be through what they believe. So once they change the dynamic of what we believe, everything else is easy because now the indoctrination starts. The more you act American, the better things are going to be for you. The more you accept the European ideas, life is going to be great for you. And that's why you have so many blacks who are, like you say, they're sellouts, but yet and still they are there. They are representatives that our young people look at it and say, when you try to talk to them about what our problems are and what the solutions are, they don't want to hear it because they say, well, Michael Jordan has got 50 billion.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to explain to them that they're not going to get 50 billion, you know, and that 50 billion is not worth your soul. You know, so we have to understand that the war is for control of what you believe, not who you are, what you believe. They want you, once you accept European psychology, well, you're for all intents and purposes, you're defeated.
Well, I think we have to be careful with the term sellout as well, because everyone on this panel, in my opinion, have sold out, and sometimes we might do it on a daily basis without even realizing or recognizing, because we will go and we will buy and spend our dollars with every organization. We don't think
Except
about
black.
buying from black people for the most part. So no matter if it's shoes, no matter if it's hair, no matter if it's whatever it is, we go and buy from other people without even thinking about it. And I believe part of that problem is also from the attack on things such as Black Wall Street, when we had our dollars in there, in the community. So if that was, just think about it, if that was to be able to be expended in every city, then we would not have to be dependent upon European dollars or Europeans for the most part.
But also, you know, I think that we should not be afraid of terms like sellout or talking about white people in the concept, because it's a conceptual idea. You know, it's not saying that all white people are bad or that all of us are sellout. And like you said, all of us have at some level of selling out. That's right. Because if we work for somebody else, if we work for somebody we don't want to work for, we have sold out because we feel like this is the only way we can make it to keep from sleeping in the street.
Wouldn't you feel better though if there were, because there are at least 1,000, maybe 10,000 Chinatowns in this country.
Right.
Germantown, Japantown, and there isn't one black village like Wall Street, which goes back to the 20s. So this has been a complete, I don't know what we would call it, but we don't own
We don't
enough.
own it.
But many of the times, that's not our fault.
Yeah, but
Most of it is, some of it is, but then
I'm going to disagree with you.
Yeah, I disagree as well.
I believe, but if we cannot get the loan and we have the qualifications to get the loan, which I'm sure everybody understands redlining. We have those qualifications, then we should be able to go and get the loan from those establishments. On the flip side of that coin, I do understand, I'm going to say this, if we put our dollars and our resources to one another, as opposed to not going to some of these other organizations, then we can build our own banks. And I believe that was one of the things with in Libya, Gaddafi, he was looking at bringing those heads of states together.
From the 54
Okay.
countries, yeah.
But you know, but one of the things you run into now is you know, I've talked to people since the last show, and talked to them about this whole Wall Street idea, Black Wall Street. They said, "Oh, that can never happen again in America." These are black people. Well, what do you mean it can never happen again in America? Which means to me that they are totally sold out in terms of the psychology that they're operating from. So if you're operating from that psychology, you are not even interested in starting to work on a Wall Street. If I came to you and said, "Look, brother, I got some money over here, you got some money, let's put it together and let's start each time," and you tell me, "Well, brother, no, man, it sounds like separation to me." Because
But
I've
also,
had-
that, to me, that's a total brainwashing. That's exactly what they want. So my question to the panel is, how do we start this conversation? How do we initiate or ignite the fire in our people to turn their light switch back on, to start thinking for themselves, and to come together and to buy black?
So, yeah. So two things. One, I want to go back to integration. That was our push. We
exactly.
marched
Yes,
to be integrated.
yes,
So we
I
got
agree.
They said, be careful what you ask for. So we got exactly what we asked for.
I
Okay.
agree.
And knowing who we were dealing with, we got exactly what we asked for. The other thing I think also, as far as us having the ability to come together, because there's so much distrust in who we are as people with the world, how we're framed, how we're stereotyped, we buy into all that negativity about who we are. So of course we're not going to trust each other to build up. Not only that, most people don't want a black only anything anyway. You can't, a lot of these young kids, you can't even sell them on anything black. They get tired of hearing you talk about, why are you talking about black this, why are you worried about who I'm dating? Why? I mean, they don't want, we're not like that. America isn't like that anymore. It's like, honey, you need to open up your eyes.
Well, I don't think it's just
that therein lies the problem, because the psychological damage is so severe.
deep.
But you know, but I also disagree that, you know, that we are responsible for our own consciousness.
That's right.
We're
So we have to
responsible
do
for
the
that. So in
education,
that
we have to
sense,
build our own
That was my
Yeah.
question as to how do we get that going? How do
Yeah.
we implement that? And that is why a group of people started Banco.
Right.
Right.
You know, to start those conversations, to get that education, to get the people going.